à tous. Je suis très heureux d'être ici en compagnie de la ministre de l'Infrastructure et des Collectivités, Catherine McKenna, et du président de la Banque de l'Infrastructure du Canada, Michael Sabia. Avant de procéder à l'annonce d'aujourd'hui, j'aimerais prendre un instant pour faire le point sur la COVID-19. In the last few days, COVID-19 cases have continued to rise across the country. Ontario has seen its highest ever daily number of cases. Montreal and Quebec City are at their top level of alert. And everywhere, this virus remains a threat. Last spring, we worked together to flatten the curve. I know we can do that again this fall. So please, keep following public health instructions. Wear a mask, wash your hands, and keep your distance. And if you haven't already, download the COVID Alert app from the App Store or Google Play. It's free, it protects your privacy, and it's another way to keep yourself and others safe. As of this morning, Manitoba has now brought the app fully online, joining Ontario, Newfoundland and Labrador, New Brunswick, and Saskatchewan. And in the coming days, we're looking forward to even more provinces following their lead. So download the app today. En raison de la hausse du nombre de cas, il est très important pour tout le monde de continuer à suivre les règles de santé publique. Portez un masque, lavez-vous les mains et gardez vos distances. Et, si ce n'est pas déjà fait, téléchargez l'application gratuite Alerte COVID. Depuis ce matin, l'application fonctionne pleinement au Manitoba, qui se joint maintenant à l'Ontario, Terre-Neuve-et-Labrador, le Nouveau-Brunswick et la Saskatchewan. On espère que d'autres provinces emboîteront le pas. De notre côté, le gouvernement continue de travailler avec les provinces et les territoires pour assurer votre sécurité. Plus tôt cette semaine, j'ai appelé le premier ministre Ford et le premier ministre Legault pour offrir mon plein appui alors qu'on confronte cette deuxième vague ensemble. On a parlé de ce que notre gouvernement pourrait faire de plus, notamment en ce qui concerne le dépistage et le soutien aux petites et moyennes entreprises. Plus tard aujourd'hui, nous aurons notre 19e rencontre des premiers ministres des provinces et des territoires. On doit poursuivre nos efforts ensemble. Je pense, entre autres, à l'accord sur la relance sécuritaire ou au fonds pour une rentrée scolaire sécuritaire. Ce sont des investissements fédéraux qui aident avec toutes sortes de mesures, dont l'équipement de protection individuelle ou la protection des enfants et du personnel scolaire. La priorité, présentement, c'est d'aider les Canadiens à traverser la tempête. Last Wednesday, in the speech from the throne, we announced our plan to support Canadians through this crisis as long as it takes, whatever it takes. Job one remains keeping people safe. And as we do that, we're also going to fight for the livelihoods of every single worker. This spring was tough for a lot of people who either lost their jobs or saw their hours cut. And while many Canadians are back at work, many others are still looking. As a government, there are ways we can help by building on what we've done so far. In the throne speech, we announced a plan to create over 1 million jobs for Canadians. We'll make this happen by extending the wage subsidy and investing in youth employment. And we'll also look at opportunities in growing sectors, which is what I want to talk about today. This morning, our government is launching a $10 billion infrastructure plan to build stronger, healthier communities while helping Canadians get back to work. In fact, this plan alone will create about 60,000 jobs right across the country. Through the Canada Infrastructure Bank, this 3-year growth plan will invest in everything from clean power, zero-emission buses and home retrofits to broadband and irrigation infrastructure for farmers. This is a win-win. With smart, targeted investments, we can get people back on the job and grow the economy while building a healthy, sustainable future for everyone. Aujourd'hui, je vous annonce que nous lançons un plan d'infrastructure de 10 milliards de dollars afin de bâtir des communautés plus fortes et de créer des dizaines de milliers d'emplois pour les Canadiens. Par l'intermédiaire de la Banque de l'Infrastructure du Canada, ce plan de croissance étalé sur 3 ans permettra d'investir dans plusieurs secteurs, incluant l'énergie propre, les autobus zéro émission, la rénovation éco-énergétique l'Internet haute vitesse et l'infrastructure d'irrigation pour les agriculteurs. Grâce à des investissements judicieux comme ceux-ci, nous pouvons remettre les gens au travail, faire croître l'économie et bâtir un avenir sain et durable pour tous. Alors que nous travaillons à bâtir un pays plus fort, nous devons nous assurer que personne n'est laissé pour compte. Les 6 derniers mois ont été difficiles pour tout le monde, mais en particulier pour un bon nombre de nos aînés. Aux aînés, vous avez travaillé fort toute votre vie et c'est maintenant à notre tour de travailler fort pour vous offrir le meilleur soutien possible. Notre gouvernement va rester à l'écoute et on va rester aux aguets pour s'assurer que vous ayez tout ce dont vous avez besoin. Comme on a annoncé dans le discours du trône, on va continuer de prendre des mesures pour protéger les personnes dans les établissements de soins de longue durée, tout en aidant les personnes âgées à rester chez elles plus longtemps et en augmentant les pensions. Our communities, just like our families, are stronger because of the contributions of seniors. On National Seniors Day and every day, let's recognize the people in our lives who helped raise us and who made this country what it is. Finally, I want to end today by recognizing some important news out of the House of Commons. Earlier this morning, our government introduced a bill to end conversion therapy in Canada. It's past time to put a stop to this unacceptable, discredited practice that has hurt far too many LGBTQ2 Canadians. Conversion therapy is harmful, degrading, and has no place in Canada. I hope all parties step up, come together, and support this bill. Thank you. I'm now pleased to pass it over to Minister McKenna.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. When the Prime Minister asked me to take on this critically important ministry, I set 3 overarching priorities. 1, to work collaboratively to get shovel-worthy projects built quickly, creating jobs and economic growth. 2, to build infrastructure, more public transit, high-speed broadband, wastewater, clean energy that improves the quality of life for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. And 3, to build cleaner, climate-resilient infrastructure that helps build a low-carbon economy. This requires not simply short-term will to get projects built, but a long-term vision for good value, world-class, sustainable infrastructure aligned with Canada's growth and climate goals, and a clear plan to achieve it. Pour que le Canada puisse réaliser son potentiel, nous devons faire et nous faisons des investissements historiques dans les infrastructures pour créer des emplois, développer notre économie et augmenter notre compétitivité tout en créant un avenir plus propre et plus inclusif. Jusqu'à date, grâce à des ententes avec des provinces et territoires, Infrastructure Canada a investi 10 milliards de dollars dans des projets d'infrastructure qui améliorent la qualité de vie des Canadiens dans les collectivités de tout le pays. Plus de 20 milliards de dollars de financement fédéral sont encore disponibles. Les provinces et territoires ont accès à ce financement dès maintenant. When the pandemic came along, we adjusted our infrastructure program to help Canadians deal with the health and economic crisis. We're reviewing projects even faster. Since March, we've approved nearly 1,000 projects to build Canada's communities and create good jobs. We introduced a new $3.3 billion COVID resilience funding stream with faster project approvals, a bigger federal funding share, and more flexibility to fund a wider range of pandemic resilient infrastructure projects, whether it's upgrades and retrofits to long-term care homes and schools or new parks and cycling paths. Le volet résilience à la COVID-19, introduit par notre gouvernement, permettra à court terme de lancer un plus grand nombre de projets plus rapidement, de créer des emplois et de rendre les collectivités plus habitables, ainsi que de soutenir notre objectif à long terme, visant un avenir à faible émission de carbone. And just last week, as the Prime Minister spoke about, in the speech from the throne, we committed to creating 1 million jobs, including through investments in all types of infrastructure, public transit, energy-efficient retrofits, clean energy, high-speed broadband, affordable housing. And it's clear that sustainable infrastructure and a move to the clean economy is not only where the world is going, it is a huge economic and jobs opportunity for Canada. The fact is, Canada's infrastructure plan invests in thousands of projects, creates jobs across the country, and builds stronger, cleaner, more inclusive communities. And as Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, I know that the Canada Infrastructure Bank can and must play a bigger role at this time of crisis, but also a time of opportunity to build back better. This huge opportunity is underlined by experts across Canada. The Advisory Council on Economic Growth emphasized the opportunity to leverage the trillions of dollars in institutional capital to meet Canada's growing infrastructure needs. The panel on sustainable finance encouraged Canada to take advantage of the huge opportunity of clean growth, including by using the Canada Infrastructure Bank. And just this week, a study by the Institute for Sustainable Finance at Queen's University estimates that Canada could meet its climate targets through major capital investments over the next decade, including through the Canada Infrastructure Bank. The Canada Infrastructure Bank is critical to expanding Canada's ambition to get more world-class sustainable infrastructure built by bringing in the private sector. And I'm pleased to see that under the leadership of Michael Sabia, the bank has a new focused growth plan designed for these times and aligned with the government's priorities. From significantly increasing our broadband investments so all Canadians have access to affordable high-speed broadband, to transforming how we power our economy through clean energy and getting rural and remote Indigenous communities off diesel, to creating thousands of jobs by retrofitting homes and buildings, cutting energy costs for Canadian families and businesses, to electrifying our public transit system, including more electric buses, so Canadians can get around in faster, cleaner, and more affordable ways, to recognizing that farmers are key partners and working with them on building more resilient water and irrigation infrastructure, supporting our agriculture and agri-food sector. The Canada Infrastructure Bank's new growth plan will create 60,000 jobs across Canada. It will support Canadian businesses, will grow our economy, and help build a low-carbon future where Canada is more productive, more competitive, and Canadians have a better quality of life. La Banque de l'Infrastructure du Canada joue un rôle essentiel pour ce qui est d'appuyer les ambitions du Canada en faisant appel au secteur privé pour construire davantage d'infrastructures. Sous la direction de Michael Sabia, la Banque dispose d'un nouveau plan de croissance conçu pour le monde d'aujourd'hui. Le plan est aligné aux priorités du gouvernement et axé sur des domaines essentiels, comme un meilleur accès à l'Internet haute vitesse, l'énergie propre, la modernisation des bâtiments, l'irrigation agricole et les réseaux de transport en commun électriques. Le plan de croissance de la Banque de l'Infrastructure du Canada permettra de créer 60 000 emplois, de faire croître notre économie et de contribuer à bâtir un avenir à faible émission de carbone. Before I pass on the microphone to Michael Sabia to tell you more about the bank's growth plan, I just want to say a few words about the new chair of the Canada Infrastructure Bank. This spring, we asked Michael Sabia to come on board because we recognize that in this troubled time of huge economic disruption, there's also a real opportunity for Canada. We needed his ambition and vision for the new phase of the Canada Infrastructure Bank. Michael Sabia est un des dirigeants d'entreprise les plus accomplis du pays. Il apporte avec lui sa grande expérience des politiques publiques et du monde de l'investissement à la Banque de l'Infrastructure du Canada, qui commence une nouvelle phase dans son approche de financement de certains des plus grands projets d'infrastructure du Canada, qui vont améliorer la qualité de vie des Canadiens et de créer un avenir plus propre. We asked him to step up, and Michael did. Let me just state here today, the bank has risen to the occasion, and this is good for Canadians, and it is good for Canada. Families and businesses want to locate and build where they know infrastructure is modern, clean, and resilient. And Canada has an excellent opportunity to be the low-carbon economy that global investors beat a path to if we keep making smart choices right now. Merci. À vous la parole, Michel.
Merci bien. Merci bien. Monsieur le Premier ministre, Madame McKenna, je tiens d'abord à vous remercier de la confiance que vous accordez à la Banque de l'infrastructure du Canada en cette période importante pour le Canada, les Canadiennes et les Canadiens. Le Canada a besoin de croissance. Aujourd'hui, tous les pays en ont besoin. La croissance crée les emplois et les emplois créent des possibilités. Investir dans les infrastructures est l'une des façons les plus productives d'encourager la croissance aujourd'hui et d'accroître notre potentiel de croissance dans l'avenir. Les infrastructures, c'est l'épine dorsale de notre économie. Elles la structurent. Elles aident à déterminer notre niveau de productivité. Investir dans les infrastructures renforce notre capacité collective de créer les emplois. Investir de cette façon permet de générer la richesse sociale dont nous avons besoin pour offrir une meilleure vie aux Canadiens. C'est ce qu'ont fait les chemins de fer ou les autoroutes dans le passé et c'est ce que nous faisons avec ce plan. Au cours des prochaines 24 à 36 mois, nous allons investir 10 milliards de dollars. We will launch projects that help ensure that Canadians prosper in a low-carbon world, with $2.5 billion for clean energy, from power generation to storage to transmission. $2 billion to retrofit buildings to help make our cities more sustainable, and $1.5 billion for clean commutes in zero-emission buses. We'll invest $2 billion so that more than 750,000 Canadian households and small businesses have the broadband connections they need to do well in a digital economy. And we will invest $1.5 billion to enable Canada's farmers to produce more food for consumption here at home and around the world by irrigating 700,000 more acres of land. On dit parfois, l'espoir n'est pas un plan, que les bonnes intentions ne sont pas suffisantes. Et nous sommes tout à fait d'accord. Le plan que nous annonçons aujourd'hui a été construit étape par étape, du début à la fin. Un plan construit de cette façon par la Banque de l'infrastructure. Ce plan est le résultat d'une analyse sérieuse des projets actuels et potentiels. Bref, ce plan est réel. Nous avons beaucoup travaillé pour en arriver ici, évidemment. Mais il reste encore beaucoup de travail à faire pour donner vie à ce plan. Nous savons que la qualité d'un plan dépend de l'excellence de son exécution. La BIC va aller de l'avant rapidement parce que nous savons qu'il est important de favoriser la relance économique maintenant. Ceci dit, nous allons agir avec discipline et rigueur pour jeter des bases solides dès maintenant pour le moyen et le long terme. At the bank, we will invest in projects that best meet three key tests. First, impact. Projects with the greatest potential to deliver the economic benefits of improved growth, ideally projects of scale. Second, value. Projects where the bank's investment can act as a catalyst to bring in third-party capital now, or where our participation can open markets for private investors in the future. By attracting other people's capital, the bank maximizes the value of every dollar of taxpayer investment. In this way, we can stretch $1 of taxpayer investment into $2 or $3 of total project investment. This is value for taxpayers. And finally, return. Projects that enable the bank to earn our capital back. Why? So that we can invest and reinvest, constantly repurposing our capital from one project today to a new one tomorrow. so that we are continually helping to build the infrastructure that Canada needs for growth and jobs. The Infrastructure Bank's top priority is delivering this plan. The team of investment professionals at the bank is solid. They're ready to go. And a new chief executive will be in place in the coming weeks. Over the next 24 to 36 months, we can create more than 60,000 jobs at a time when they have never been so important. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is only the start. When more high-impact projects emerge, we are ready to invest more. Beyond this plan and its immediate priorities, the bank will continue developing ideas and working with partners across government and the private sector. The bank is ambitious. We want to build our presence in a range of areas, from large-scale urban transit to water systems to the new kinds of infrastructure that Canada needs to prosper in a digital age. The Infrastructure Bank is open for business and committed to investing to expand the potential of our economy to grow, potential to create jobs, to create opportunities for Canadians. Prime Minister, back to you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Sabia. Prime Minister, Mr. McKenna, we'll start with the questions on the phone first. We'll take 3 questions with follow-ups and then go to the room. Over to you, operator.
Thank you, merci. The first question is from Heather Scoffield, Toronto Star. The line is open. Please go ahead.
You might be on mute, Heather.
Am I still on mute?
Nope,
Hello?
we can hear you now.
Okay, great, thanks. I'm sorry about that. There has been a lot of talk during the pandemic about weaknesses that have been revealed by shutting down the economy, and the need to expand the definition of infrastructure to include social infrastructure, build out more childcare spaces, build out long-term care homes, build out health infrastructure. Is there any way that you could leverage the capital that's in the Infrastructure Bank and the new plan to take care of those needs?
Thank you very much, Heather. The Infrastructure Bank was created a number of years ago to fill a gap that we saw as existing, where we could actually draw in private investments into goods that were returning benefits to those investors. And by putting forward $35 billion of federal money, we could actually draw in billions more in terms of private capital in things that do create returns for investors. But that's only a part of infrastructure that Canada needs. We've also put forward historic levels of investments in infrastructure directly from federal coffers and partnership with the provinces for those things that don't give returns to private investors. And daycares and shelters are things exactly like that. Our commitment as a government is to invest in projects like that to ensure that communities are stronger, that people have jobs, and that there are services available for this pandemic, but also for building back better for the long term.
Okay, and I have a follow-up question for Mr. Sabia. So, Mr. Sabia, you were at the forefront at the case in terms of, having a very concrete rules and investment rules and objectives in terms of sustainable financing for your team. And I'm wondering if you will bring that same approach to how you plan to run the Infrastructure Bank.
The answer to that is yes. And I think the evidence of that is, or at least the beginnings of the evidence of that, is evident in the announcement this morning, where we are allocating significant sums of money, significant levels of investment with respect to clean power, with respect to zero-emission buses, with respect to making our cities cleaner because of substantial building retrofits. All of those are consistent with an investment strategy that is designed to help Canada meet its greenhouse gas emissions, et cetera, to build a cleaner and more prosperous economy for the future. So the evidence is there. We will go beyond that, and we will consider doing lots of other things in a similar vein. But that fundamental commitment will be a core part of the investment strategy of the bank going forward. Oui, bien sûr. C'est ce que nous avons fait à la Caisse de dépôt et nous allons maintenant adopter essentiellement la même perspective à la Banque d'infrastructure avec des investissements pour réaliser l'objectif de bâtir une économie plus propre. Donc, ça fait partie de l'annonce que nous avons faite ce matin. Ça, c'est évident dans l'annonce que nous avons faite et ça va continuer à être un principe fondamental de notre stratégie d'investissement à la banque.
Merci. Prochaine question. Operator.
Merci. La question suivante est de Raymond Filion de TVA. À vous la parole.
Merci, bonjour à tous. Question pour le Premier ministre sur les zones rouges d'abord au Québec. Il y a beaucoup de familles qui sont très inquiètes aujourd'hui, plusieurs employeurs qui sont forcés de fermer leurs portes. Vous avez dit avant-hier que vous regardez la situation. Alors aujourd'hui, qu'est-ce que vous dites à ces gens qui se retrouvent sans gagne-pain? Est-ce que votre gouvernement compte aller au-delà des mesures qui ont déjà été annoncées, les mesures d'aide?
D'abord, Raymond, on continue d'être là pour aider les familles à travers le pays qui sont frappées par cette pandémie. Particulièrement, évidemment, ces nombreuses personnes dans les zones rouges qui vivent des moments particulièrement difficiles. Nous avons annoncé et on a pu passer de façon unanime à la Chambre des communes notre plan pour continuer et avec l'appui direct aux individus de 500 $ par semaine, plus par la PCU, mais maintenant par une assurance-emploi élargie avec un programme qui va avoir des bénéfices d'assurance-emploi, mais qui va garder ce 500 $ par semaine comme niveau d'appui pour les gens qui ont perdu leur emploi ou qui se voient en difficulté à cause de la COVID-19. En plus de ça, on est en train d'étendre la subvention salariale et on est en train de mettre sur point un plan qui va refléter des réalités régionales. C'est certain que des entreprises à travers le pays ont été frappées par la COVID-19. Quels que soient les chiffres dans la communauté, il y a eu des entreprises frappées par les actions qu'on a dû prendre en tant que pays. Mais particulièrement dans des zones qui vont devoir faire une fermeture plus accrue, comme on est en train de voir à Montréal et ailleurs, nous cherchons des moyens spécifiquement d'appuyer ces petites entreprises, ces travailleurs, ces entreprises qui doivent faire face à des semaines de difficultés encore plus que ce à quoi ils s'attendaient. Comme je l'ai dit au Premier ministre Legault plus tôt cette semaine, comme je vais le répéter cet après-midi dans ma rencontre avec tous les premiers ministres des provinces, le gouvernement fédéral va continuer à être là pour appuyer les gens dans ces moments difficiles.
Une suivi, Ray?
Oui, mon suivi porte sur la crise d'octobre, dont c'est le 50e anniversaire. Plusieurs réclament des excuses officielles de votre gouvernement pour les nombreuses arrestations sommaires qui ont été effectuées. Est-ce que vous comptez présenter des excuses officielles?
C'est certain que les événements d'octobre 1970 ont été très difficiles pour bien des Québécois. Je pense qu'il faut commencer par avoir une pensée pour la famille de Pierre Laporte, pour qui cet anniversaire ramène de très douloureux souvenirs. There's no question that the events of October 1970 had a difficult impact on many Quebecers, but I think we need to first and foremost remember that this difficult anniversary is going to be particularly painful for the families of Pierre Laporte.
Thank you. Next question, operator.
Thank you. The next question is from Bill Curry, the Globe and Mail. Your line is open. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Prime Minister, the three-year plan announced today includes $500 million to accelerate the delivery of projects in which the bank intends to invest. So what does that mean for the high-frequency rail proposal between Quebec City and Toronto that your government's been studying for several years now?
As we said, the Infrastructure Bank is extremely excited about the opportunities laid out today, but there is much more that the bank is looking at. The $10 million outlay of capital that they're talking about in the coming years is just part of the funds that the Infrastructure Bank has to draw in private capital to benefit Canadians. So I know there's much work done on a range of things, and perhaps I could pass it to Minister McKenna and Mr. Sabia to further comment on this.
Well, thank you very much. As the Prime Minister mentioned, this $10 billion growth plan is very focused on the times we live in, focused on creating 60,000 jobs in the short term and growing the economy, but in the long term, also aligned with our growth and climate objectives. In terms of rail in the corridor, I think we all know that that is something that is really important. There's been discussions literally over decades. The bank is a critical part of the discussions that we're having now. I'm working with Minister Garneau as well to advance this project, to look at options, and to make sure that we also get value for taxpayers. And I think it's really a stay tuned, but I think there are real opportunities to have transformative investments that show the ambition that Canada has to improve the quality of life for Canadians, but also to make sure that we take one taxpayer dollar and, as Michael Sabia has said, turn that into double or triple that so that we can build even more good infrastructure for Canadians. Canadians want better infrastructure. There's a huge appetite, but also we know businesses want to locate in countries that have good infrastructure. And also, as we move forward to a low-carbon future, we need to be building the infrastructure we need to attract investment, but of course to ensure a more sustainable future for our kids.
Very briefly, because I think the Prime Minister and Minister McKenna have already, Bill, answered the substance of your question, but I'll just say that, look, we are actively involved in this. There is a joint project office that was set up some time ago. We are analyzing now a variety of different options with respect to potential routes, with respect to potential technologies, et cetera. This is a large and complex project. I must say it brings back certain memories of the REM and my work there when I was at La Caisse. But that work's continuing, and we hope to be able to, there's a good deal left to do. We hope to wrap that up in a relatively short period of time and then present options to the government, because it is a very, very major project with substantial financial commitments.
And a follow-up, Bill?
Sure. For Mr. Sabia, during the pandemic, there are certain sectors like hospitality, tourism, travel that are particularly exposed to financial trouble, the airports, airlines, hotels. Is the bank looking to get involved in some way in helping these sectors that are perhaps even open to sales?
Bill, look, our priority is as evident this morning. Our priority is the implementation of the $10 billion plan that we announced this morning, and there is a substantial amount of work that has been done on that, but there is a substantial amount of work to do, and we expect to be able to announce and begin making investments prior to the end of this year, prior to the end of 2020, to get that investment program moving. That's point number one, and that's our top priority. We will, of course, remain and are very interested in broadening out what the bank does, and there are a variety of opportunities for the bank to do that. One in particular, for instance, is better positioning Canada for a digital future, where that is a new definition to infrastructure, but it is a fundamentally important definition and a definitional change of what infrastructure is. So those kinds of things remain very, very much on our agenda. That being said, our focus is on building infrastructure, new infrastructure, building new infrastructure that will increase growth and create jobs in Canada. That's the principal thing that we're focused on and that we intend to do over the coming period.
If I can add, the Infrastructure Bank is an incredibly powerful tool to create opportunities, to create jobs, to create growth for the medium and long term in the country by investing in some very major projects and taking on and drawing in significant international capital as well. But it is one tool specifically that is being laid out in some very powerful ways today. We have, as a government, tremendous other tools as well and responsibilities that go beyond the infrastructure bank for investing in infrastructure like infrastructure that doesn't bring back immediate revenue, whether it's childcare spaces or shelters or other community-style infrastructures. We continue to have an incredibly ambitious plan for infrastructure, the largest investments in infrastructure in Canada's history. And while the bank is doing extraordinary things, it is just one key part of a larger approach that, of course, is looking at the impact on various sectors across the country of this pandemic.
Thank you. We'll now turn to the room.
Hi, Tom Perry with CBC. One of the criticisms since you had created this bank is that it's been slow to get money out the door. So I'm wondering, can you explain why it is it's taken until now to make an announcement of this scale? And also, Mr. Sabia, you were talking about, I guess, a time frame. When are we going to see projects actually taking shape?
First of all, over the past 3 years, we've seen the Canadian infrastructure develop an approach and a model that has generated a lot of interest around the world. We put forward something extremely innovative that, quite frankly, we then had to figure out how to deliver. The idea was that if we were to put forward public money focused on creating growth opportunities for communities, for sectors across the country while creating jobs, investors would bring in significant amounts of capital as well, looking for long-term returns, as we know global investors are looking for. So we saw this as a new way of leveraging a combination of public money and private money to achieve tremendous benefits for Canadians in creating jobs, in creating opportunities. The investments that they're announcing today, whether it's investing in better irrigation for farmers across the prairies, investing in broadband, investing in electric buses, are the kinds of things that are going to create tremendous benefits for Canadians, while at the same time creating long-term prosperity for all investors. These are things that we know are going to be key to building that better future. Over the past 3 years, the Infrastructure Bank has stepped up on a large range of projects, the flagship being the REM project in Montreal that Michael was very much involved in wearing his previous hat. But we have now seen the Infrastructure Bank really hit its stride, and at a moment where Canada really needs this kind of investment to boost economic activity right now during this pandemic, but also ensure that we're building a stronger, more resilient economy for the years to come. Michael.
Yeah, I think the Prime Minister's answer really captures the essence of this. Yes, has it taken some time to build the foundations for an organization? Yes, it has taken some time. But that does take time to build an organization from scratch, particularly an organization that has an innovative mandate where you have to do a lot of things by discovery and learning as you take it forward. I would say that one of the ways of thinking about the announcement we're making this morning is it reflects now our confidence that the foundations set at the bank are sufficiently solid to support a very large investment program, to touch on your second question, that is going to move out quickly. As I said, in response to a previous question, our plan is to have investments made, announced and made through the course of 2020, in other words, before the end of the year. So we will be moving quickly, and we can move quickly, first because of those foundations that have been set, because those foundations have allowed us to do the kind of analysis, the rigorous work that's been required to build up this program from project pipelines, existing project pipelines of potential projects, all of which we have reviewed, and that is what has led us to this plan, and that is why we are confident about our capacity to execute, because those foundations are solid, because the analyses have been done, because we know where these projects are. So this plan, as I said, is very real, very concrete, bottom-up built, and we have a lot of confidence in it.
Say that in French.
It's a good thing.
Oui, évidemment, pour établir les fondations d'une organisation, ça demande du temps. et surtout pour une organisation franchement innovatrice comme la Banque de l'infrastructure du Canada. Mais ça, c'est fait. Et les fondations sont solides. Et grâce à ces fondations solides, on était bien capable maintenant, nous avons exécuté des analyses extrêmement rigoureuses, disciplinées, pour analyser plusieurs projets, des centaines de projets que nous avons analysés. Et c'est notre capacité de le faire qui nous a amené à ce plan et le chiffre de 10 milliards de dollars. Donc, c'est un plan extrêmement concret, spécifique. Comme je disais, l'espoir n'est pas un plan. Et donc, ce plan n'est pas bâti sur l'espoir, c'est construit sur les analyses, les projets spécifiques, les projets réels. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle nous avons beaucoup de confiance dans notre capacité d'exécuter et de mettre en œuvre ce plan.
As a follow-up, can I ask you then, you're talking about attracting third-party...
If you ask me in a third language, you're out of luck.
I will ask you about third-party
to.
capital. How difficult is it to attract outside investors into projects like this in the current economy in the middle of a pandemic?
Well, I think there's, wearing my old hat, global investors, be they debt investors, be they equity investors. I mean, let's never lose sight of one thing, that on a global basis, Canada is a good place to invest. It's a very good place to invest. It has lots of economic potential. It is a stable country. It is a country that works. And that's attractive for large global investors. So I think as we at the bank continue and become even more creative about how to structure projects, about the nature of those projects, I don't think the issue will be our ability to attract capital. I think one of the issues that we have had is that we have not thought sufficiently creatively about bringing in outside capital and the power that that can bring in terms of building the kinds of infrastructure that Canada needs to prosper. Let's never forget that Canada is a small economy. We need to attract capital. We need to become one of the most innovative economies in the world. And its infrastructure, at least part of becoming that, is infrastructure. It's only part because it's a complex problem or a complex challenge. But that being said, my level of confidence in our ability to work with investors outside of Canada, but also investors inside Canada, because let's also not forget that Canada has large pools of capital. And today, given the investment climate today, the steady returns offered by infrastructure are highly attractive. So I think the challenge for us is not the supply of capital. The supply of capital will be there. Our challenge is identifying the projects, structuring the financing in an attractive way. The capital will be there if we do that, and that's the job of the Infrastructure Bank.
Thank you for taking our questions. Kevin Gallagher with CTV National News. Mr. Prime Minister and Mr. Sabia, I still want to understand, though, the timing of today's announcement. I mean, Canada's dealing with a second wave of COVID. There's a huge concern about the capacity for testing, long wait times. This announcement, some might see as a way to change the channel from that. Why today? Why now for this investment? Of course, this $10 billion was part of a $35 billion that was part of the initial setup of this infrastructure bank. So it's not necessarily new money, and many of these promises are old promises as well. Why today? Is there something different in the way that this money is being rolled out, or investors that are approaching the bank? Let us know.
We are, of course, primarily concerned with the situation facing so many communities around the country with the second wave of COVID-19. That remains this government's top priority. That's what we've spent the past weeks focusing on, and that's why I'm looking forward to meeting with the premiers again tonight for the 19th time over the course of this pandemic to make sure that we are working together and that we are delivering for Canadians. This government promised to have people's back, and we will. At the same time, though, as people are struggling through this pandemic, people are also thinking about what's next. What lessons have we learned from this pandemic? How we're going to build back better? How we're going to move forward in ways that are responsible and also are fiscally responsible. We know there's concerns about, yes, having support for Canadians right now. But as we look at the lessons of this pandemic on creating a stronger economy into the future, one that is more sustainable, one that creates better jobs for everyone, one that builds a stronger future where everyone has a real and fair chance to succeed, we do need to make investments. But as you pointed out, Kevin, this infrastructure bank was set up with money allocated to it years ago. And today what we're announcing is how we're using those allocations, those funds, to draw in capital on a range of projects across the country, whether it's broadband, whether it's agricultural irrigation projects for the prairies, whether it's moving forward on creating more electric buses. These are tangible things that we know Canadians are going to rely on to create growth and opportunities and jobs into the future. So even as we are entirely focused on this pandemic right now, we're also using the powerful tools we created years ago in the infrastructure bank to ensure that after this pandemic, we continue to have the kind of opportunities and economic growth Canadians expect.
Just as a follow-up, Prime Minister, a bit more personal for you. Quebec reported over 900 cases and 16 additional deaths. And this is for my colleagues in Quebec. When you hear that number and understand this increase is happening, what do you tell the people in your riding, in Papineau, right now who are worried about those climbing positive cases for a second time?
I think we are all worried about the rising cases across the country. As a Quebec MP, as a Quebecer, I'm particularly, of course, worried about friends, family, and constituents in Montreal. And that's why this government has stepped up from the very beginning with supports directly for people, for small businesses, so that we could do what was necessary to keep ourselves safe through the spring, but also working closely with provinces to give them what they need to manage the cases in their jurisdictions. I've spoken 18 times already, with a 19th time this afternoon, with the First Ministers across the country to ensure that we are all working together. And that's really what Canadians want to see. Different political parties, different orders of government working together. The fact that our plan received unanimous support from the House of Commons, from all parties in the House of Commons, on how we're going to move forward in supporting people this fall, is another thing that reassures Canadians in a time of deep anxiety. I am worried about the impacts of the second wave on Canadians. That's why I continue to emphasize that people need to do the things that we know work to keep us safe. Wear a mask, keep your distance, stay home wherever possible, and download the COVID Alert app, a free and easy tool that's going to keep you safe and help keep your community safe as well. There are things we know we can do to keep ourselves safe right across the country. And I know Canadians in Quebec and elsewhere are going to keep doing them.
De Radio-Canada. La Banque d'infrastructure a été créée en 2017. L'annonce d'aujourd'hui serait probablement survenue, pandémie ou pas. Donc, ma question, c'est est-ce que vous avez demandé à la Banque d'infrastructure d'ajuster les projets en fonction de la pandémie? Et sinon, comment pouvez-vous dire que l'argent d'aujourd'hui, c'est pour la relance après la pandémie?
Ça fait bien des années que nous comprenons que l'infrastructure est un élément essentiel de croissance économique, que les bons investissements en infrastructure créent des emplois, peuvent contribuer dans la lutte contre les changements climatiques et vont créer de la prospérité économique pour le court terme, pour le long terme. Effectivement, quand on a créé cette banque de l'infrastructure il y a plusieurs années, on ne s'attendait pas à une pandémie, personne ne s'attendait à une pandémie. Mais on savait très bien qu'on devait toujours chercher des moyens de créer de la croissance économique, de créer des opportunités pour tous à ce niveau-là. Or, le fait qu'on puisse annoncer ça pendant qu'on est dans une pandémie, c'est une indication que même si on est concentré de façon ancrée dans la réalité de tous les jours des gens, nous devons d'assurer qu'on est en train de créer un pays plus prospère avec des investissements en infrastructure. Alors, c'est un exemple de ce qu'on est en train de continuer à faire et du fait que la COVID-19 nous appelle à augmenter, à accélérer beaucoup des plans qu'on avait de toute façon pour créer la croissance économique. Mais je pense que sur ça, je vais passer la parole à la ministre McKenna et peut-être à M. Sebia aussi.
Alors, merci beaucoup. C'est une très bonne question. Alors, M. Sebia est venu, ça fait pas beaucoup de mois. Et quand il est venu, la pandémie a commencé. C'est pas sa faute, c'est sûr, mais on a eu une conversation. Comment est-ce qu'on peut répondre à la pandémie aussi avec la Banque d'infrastructure? C'est sûr qu'on a besoin d'aide d'emploi. On parle de 60 000 emplois avec cette annonce aujourd'hui. Et on doit faire des choses, on doit adapter. On a adapté notre programme d'infrastructure pour la pandémie parce qu'on a une crise sanitaire, mais aussi une crise économique. Et je sais, les gens vivent les deux maintenant. Alors, c'est vraiment un grand crédit à M. Sebia qu'il a, avec la Banque d'infrastructure, les gens là qui travaillent très fort ont développé un plan qui était pour les 2-3 années prochaines, qui répond à la crise, mais aussi qui sont visés à nos objectifs comme le gouvernement à long terme. On doit faire les deux choses. On doit créer des emplois, on doit croître notre économie, mais aussi on doit attaquer au changement climatique qui est une crise qui ne va pas partir après qu'on est hors de la pandémie. Mais je sais, M. Sebia peut parler un petit peu plus du processus pour arriver à ce plan.
Oh, je pense que ce n'est pas vraiment nécessaire. Je pense que je suis bien d'accord avec ces deux réponses. J'ai déjà dit que le plan est le résultat de beaucoup de travail, beaucoup d'analyses que nous avons entamées à l'intérieur de la banque. Donc, évidemment, nous sommes évidemment conscients de la situation économique, la conjoncture économique au Canada. Et donc, pour cette raison, oui, nous allons aller aussi rapidement que possible pour lancer les projets parce que la création de l'emploi, évidemment, dans les circonstances actuelles, c'est quelque chose d'essentiel et très important. Mais ceci dit, également, nous avons une responsabilité d'agir avec prudence, avec rigueur, avec discipline. Parce que 10 milliards ou 35 milliards, c'est beaucoup d'argent. Et donc, il faut agir de façon prudente. Nous allons le faire. Parce que l'objectif est toujours, oui, contribuer à la situation actuelle. Ça, c'est une priorité importante. Mais également, il faut bâtir pour l'avenir. Et il faut bâtir de façon solide pour l'avenir.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Dylan Robertson with the Winnipeg Free Press. Minister Monsef said on June 8th that the Universal Broadband Fund would launch applications, quote, in the coming days. It's been 115 days since then. I'm wondering what the holdup is for the broadband funding, and should we expect further delays now that this is going through the Infrastructure Bank?
We recognize the need in this pandemic, but in general and before this pandemic, to connect people to broadband. We know that digital connectivity is a creator of economic opportunities, a creator of more safe communities, and of growth right across the country. That's why we put forward historic investments in broadband right across the country, and we will continue to work with the Minister of Rural Economic Development, with the Minister of Innovation, Science, and Industry to move forward as rapidly as we can to create more connectivity. On top of that, as we use all different tools, the Infrastructure Bank itself is going to be able to step up and create even more connectivity across this country. And that's an important part of this announcement today that I'm happy to turn to Mr. Sebia to reemphasize.
Well, Prime Minister, I think you've answered the question right on perfectly. What we're doing is in addition to what the government already had underway and what the government is working on internally today. So you should interpret this as a significant additional contribution that will connect at least 750,000 households and small businesses at a time when that connection is an absolutely vital part of their economic lives. So this is an improvement to, an addition to what the government was already planning to do. And I would say, because this is true for every aspect of the plan that we've announced today, we've set aside $2 billion to connect, say, 750,000 households and small businesses. But if in our work with carriers and ISPs as we pursue this, there are more good ideas and more things that we can do, we have the capital and we will bring more capital to the table. And that's true across the board. So it's $10 billion today, but what really matters is the quality, the impact, the value of these projects. And if they're there, our capital will be there. And if our capital is there, other people's capital will be there. And that's how we really tackle these problems.
Thank you. That concludes today's press conference.
Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
Merci.